You know, when you think of ancient Egypt, your mind probably jumps to pharaohs, gold masks, and giant pyramids, right? But today, we're going to skip the royalty. We're telling a different kind of story. This is about the people who actually built that world, the highly skilled government contractors who carved out the tombs for the pharaohs, and more importantly, what happened when their paychecks just stopped coming.
It sounds like a question you'd hear on the news today, doesn't it? But believe it or not, that exact question is at the heart of a story from over 3,000 years ago. It's a story about broken promises, a massive economic crisis, and a group of workers who finally decided they'd had enough.
All right, so let's set the scene. Our story unfolds deep in the Egyptian desert, in a place that no ordinary person was ever supposed to lay eyes on. This wasn't some city that just grew organically. No, this was a top-secret, purpose-built community with a very, very important job to do.
On all the official paperwork, it was called Set Mot, which means the place of truth. This was the home of the artists and the craftsmen who carved and painted the incredible tombs in the Valley of the Kings. You can think of it as ancient Egypt's most exclusive and most isolated, gated community, a real company town. So how big are we talking? Well, at its absolute peak, the entire village was made up of just 68 houses, all crammed in tightly together. This was no sprawling suburb. It was a dense, self-contained little world built for a very specific, very talented group of people.
The whole settlement was less than an acre and a half, walled off completely from the outside desert. And that isolation, it was totally intentional. It was all about protecting the secrets of the royal tombs from any would-be grave robbers. But that isolation created a huge vulnerability. These villagers couldn't grow their own food. They were 100% dependent on the government for everything.
So what was it actually like to be one of these elite workers? I mean, for a regular person back in the New Kingdom, life here was about as good as you could possibly get. These guys were salaried professionals, and the perks were pretty significant.
Yeah, these were not your average laborers. The tomb builders of Set Mot were paid almost 3 times more than a typical farm worker. Now, their salary wasn't in coin, it was in the stuff that really powered the Egyptian economy. Grain, beer, fish, vegetables, all delivered like clockwork by the state.
Their whole lifestyle was pretty unique. They worked these demanding 8 to 10 day shifts out at the tombs, split up into what they called left and right gangs. But back home, the community was surprisingly modern. Literacy was really high, and get this, even among women, who could legally own property. The government even provided servants to help with the household chores, like grinding all that grain.
So how in the world do we know all these little details about their lives? It's not from some grand monument or a royal scroll. Nope. We know because these workers left behind thousands, and I mean thousands, of messages scribbled on the ancient world's version of a sticky note.
They're called Ostraca. See, papyrus was super expensive, save for really important stuff. So for all the day-to-day things, notes, receipts, letters, and especially complaints, people just used what was lying around, broken pieces of pottery. An archaeologist found over 5,000 of them in the village dump heap. It was a literal treasure trove of daily life. And these weren't just love letters or shopping lists. A lot of them were official documents, like this one. It's basically a manager's attendance sheet from 3,000 years ago. It tracks who was out of work and why, with reasons from brewing beer to the constant danger of getting stung by a scorpion.
They also give us this amazing window into their medical knowledge. This ostracon is a letter from a father to his son asking him to send along ingredients for an eye treatment. It just goes to show you that medical know-how wasn't just for doctors. It was part of the community's shared knowledge.
For generations, this system worked like a charm. The workers built the tombs, and the state delivered their food. But during the reign of one of Egypt's last great pharaohs, the whole system started to fall apart, and the tone of the messages from Set Ma'at, it changed dramatically.
So the breaking point hits around 1156 BCE, during the reign of Ramses III. The entire Egyptian empire is in turmoil. And for this tiny, isolated village, that chaos means their supply lines, their only source of food, gets severed. Their pay, those critical grain rations, just stops arriving.
You can just feel the desperation in a plea sent by a scribe named Amunacht. This isn't just an official record of a late payment, it's a cry for help. "We are hungry," he writes. 18 days have passed this month, and their rations still aren't there. So here they are, facing starvation, being ignored by the local officials. And these government employees did something absolutely unprecedented, something that, as far as we can tell, had never been recorded before in all of human history. They got organized.
They staged the world's first recorded sit-down strike. They literally threw down their tools, walked out of the Valley of the Kings, and marched to the huge mortuary temples nearby. By occupying these sacred spaces, temples built to worship dead pharaohs, they were basically holding the state religion hostage, declaring that they would not move an inch until their salaries were paid in full.
And you know what? It worked. Well, sort of. At first, anyway. The panicked officials scrambled to deliver the grain, and the workers went back to the tombs. But this was just a band-aid on a much bigger problem. The economy didn't magically get better, and over the next few years, the workers were forced to strike again and again and again. See, the strikes were really just a symptom of a much larger decay. The incredible era of the New Kingdom was drawing to a close, and the fate of this special little village was completely tied to the fate of the pharaohs they worked for.
As the central government got weaker, things got worse. Tomb robbing was everywhere, civil unrest was growing, the supply lines eventually just dried up for good. By around 1069 BCE, the village of Set-Ma'at just wasn't sustainable anymore. The people packed up and left, disappearing back into the general population. The workers were gone, but their pottery shards, their Ostraca, they stayed behind, buried in the sand.
In the end, these workers left a legacy that's way more lasting than the tombs they built. Their story, written on scraps of broken pottery, is this timeless reminder of a really fundamental bargain. That labor has value, that people deserve to be paid for their work, and that sometimes the only way to make sure you're heard is to speak together, with one collective voice.